Hey everybody, it's Elon from Inside Fighting, and this episode is going to be on a martial art that I have a very soft spot in my heart for. I'm not going to waste your time. This is one of my favorite bladed systems of all time, period, end of story, no cap. Kali Ilustrisimo. Let's jump in.
Pow, pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow, pow, ooh, ah.
All right, so before I get started, I'd like to tell everyone about my Instagram channel, inside_fighting_podcast. Why am I telling you if you're already watching on YouTube? Because I put a lot of stuff on there, these shorts that I can't put on YouTube because they'll be demonetized. I pretty much break down fights, KOs. I look at martial arts in actual street fights, and they're all 1-minute videos. They're really cool to watch because there's some tips in there when you watch real fighting that allow you to change the way you might be training your own martial art to, analyze and look at what's actually happening and what you're doing and what you're training, and does it apply to what's actually happening in the street. I don't know if that rant made sense, but just pretend like it did in the comment section below. Thanks for the engagement. Head over to inside_fighting_podcast on Instagram. There you go. End of my pitch. So, Kali Ilustrisimo. Let me first tell you where I came into contact with it. Now, what I will say before it actually is, if I'm anywhere in the world where I get to train Kali Ilustrisimo, if there's a school, if there's a personal teacher over there, I will train it. That's how much I love this system. So I'm not exaggerating when I say it's one of the few systems that really changed the way I see martial arts. Now, I came across Kali Ilustrisimo from an instructor called Tommy Dai Tang. I was fortunate enough to train with him for 2 years in Vancouver. When I lived there, I got to train privately with him. And he was an incredible instructor, incredible guy in general. And I just really miss those days. I loved the system. And there's a lot of things about the system that I actually find incredibly unique and incredibly valuable to any martial artist. So first, let me say this. In the world of Filipino martial arts, there's been an evolution because of the rattan sticks. Now, rattan sticks are the primary training tool for Filipino martial arts. But what happens is the arts have adapted over time to accommodate that tool. Stepping away a little bit, if you look at 12 Pares, Balintuak, some other systems out there, stepping away from what a knife or a blade actually is. And so sometimes they'll fixate on the stick and do techniques with a stick that you could not do with a machete or a sword. An example of this is a balitok in 12 Pares, which is a motion that hits you here and hits you here, hits you here and hits you here. But it's an impact weapon-based movement. Problem is, if you're training impact weapons all the time and you're used to impact weapons, when you pick up a sword, you will fight the way you train. This is a rule of thumb. So, these other systems are great sometimes at being impact-based systems, impact weapon-based systems, telescopic baton, a stick, whatever thing you might pick up, a cane, but they don't necessarily translate perfectly into sword and machete fighting. Now, what I will say about Ilustrisimo, it is 100% a sword machete bladed system. It always, I repeat, always looks at the integrity of the blade. In other words, there is no strike that doesn't take that into account. You have to connect with the edge or the tip of the weapon. Otherwise, it is not a valid strike. And I think that's incredibly important because a lot of time we're training in these other systems and we don't realize we're not necessarily training bladed. And so let me just play some videos here with the movement and we can analyze it and break it down. Here we have an incredible demonstration. There's Brandon Ricketts over there. And I might be wrong, but it looks like it. And if you look, this is really the basis of the training of Kali Ilustrisimo. It's a very flow-based system. Now, I know a lot of people criticize flow, but these movements are not planned. You don't know where the strike is coming from. One person is feeding. One person is reacting. Now, the person on the left here, I paused it, is the feeder. The person on the right is the person who's attacking. This is the basis, the foundation of Kali Ilustrisimo. You learn to be reactive from day one. Everything here is entirely alive and reactive. So you have a strike come at you, you have to clear it and attack. Now, this is a common theme in Kali Ilustrisimo. Even if you look at these old school videos, all the training is about constant movement, constant attack. And this is a demo. Again, no one's going to stand there and not continue to attack. But if you can already damage the person, remember, these are bladed system. So when you're taking into account that each one of these strikes should end the fight, it's very hard. They're always attacking the arm also. So that's a foundational principle of the system. Let me just come back to myself here for a second, tell you something about Cali Ilustrisimo that makes you realize how crazy this style is. I had bought a cold steel machete, and I brought it down. I was training with Tommy at the time. I showed it to him, and he's like, I had already been training with him for a while, so we had a lot of trust in each other. Now, keep in mind, I had never done live blade training in my life, like real hardcore live blade training. He just took it off and started attacking me with it, and I had a stick in my hand, and I'm blocking. And afterward, there were like chips on the stick, and it's really a system that develops such incredible reflex and timing that no matter what you transition to, it is in your body. And that's the first thing I want to talk about the system. I had one of those like Miyagi-Do moments. You know, you look at like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. That kind of stupidity that you think doesn't exist in martial arts. It really does, where something just clicks and you're like, oh my God, my body knows all of this. And my head didn't even know that my body knows it. And that had happened when we were drilling for a very long time with sticks. And then we transitioned to a knife. And for me, I'd already been, like I said, I'm a guru in Dos Paris. I'd been training Filipino martial arts most of my life. And I had a certain way of moving. And Tommy started attacking me. And I had a completely new way of moving with the knife that was just absorbed from training with him that I was unaware of. And then I realized this applied to swords. It applied to now how I use the stick. And it stuck with me forever. And again, that's because this system, the way this system is organized, is based on learning a certain angle of strikes. You first learn basic reactions to these strikes, and every reaction followed by a counter. In other words, I am fed a strike, I'm going to react and counter. I'm fed another strike, I'm going to react and counter. I'm fed another strike, I'm going to react and counter. Now, every one of these strikes that you are fed flows with each other too. So there is a complete dance of movement that comes together, which is very alive. And then it translates to almost any other tool you pick up. Now, I know this is what people say about all Filipino martial arts, but the truth is that's not the case. Because if you start with the stick and go to the blade, it's very different than starting with the blade and going to the stick. Why? Because the stick has more options than the blade. If you look at a stick, I can hit you with any part of the stick. If you look at a blade, I again have to maintain edge integrity. I have to maintain tip integrity. So if I'm stabbing you or I'm cutting you, there has to be a very specific angle. I can get away with a lot more with a stick. So when my basis of training is the stick, I leave myself a larger margin of error than if I were training with a sword or a machete. All right, let's look at another aspect of this that I absolutely love, and this is sparring. Now, we're going to first look at two different kinds of sparring, and I'm going to talk about which one I preferred and which one, again, changed the way I see fighting. So here we have some standard anything goes sparring. Now, if you look, Ilustrisimo, guys, Ilustrisimo is a ranged system. Now, there's a fascinating choice here, which you don't see very often in Ilustrisimo, but it changed. Now, let me just go back and show you what I'm talking about. If you look right here, look at this. Let's just watch again here, because this is important. See how they both always, in Ilustrisimo, you will always, almost always have the hand that has the weapon with the same lead leg. In other words, you want to keep your lead leg the same as the weapon hand for range. Because like I said, Ilustrisimo is a long-range system. They prefer to attack from far away. Now, what happens here is he changes his stance. Now, there's a reason for this. Over here, you're going to see him change to a left lead. Right there. Okay, now that changes the fight. This becomes a baiting position now. Now, Ilustrisimo does this really nice. There's a step that's called, or looks like a ghost step, where as you, and let me come back to myself 1 second here, as I swing my stick, I step my leg back. So I would have cut myself had I not moved my leg. Now, what that does is it's like a shadow step. It kind of invites you in. It clears the path, and it's very baiting in nature. Now, if you look here, it's exactly what we see set up for, right? See a bait. Because when you're in that position, you're actually more vulnerable to attack. And then he gets close enough and he changes back to his right lead. But as you can see, this does not look like a Dos Paris fight where they're in each other's faces, a Wekaf fight, if you've seen those before. They're actually in and out of range beautifully. If you look, they're actually not connecting on each other that much. And if you have any experience in Filipino martial arts, what you'll realize is that this is a lot cleaner than what you normally see. What you normally see is two guys rush in on each other, crack each other a bunch of times, or then take each other down. You rarely see people maintain range. And the reason for this is, again, because of a stick versus a sword. You cannot afford to get too close with a sword. And so this system is taking that into account, and it is allowing the fight to progress in a way that is actually reflective of that. And how do I know it's reflective of that? Because I watch and analyze machete fights from all over the world. I watch them in Dominican Republic. You look at them all over South America. There's a lot of countries where machete fights are actually still the standard of violence. They're not gunfights, especially third world countries. And if you look at a lot of those fights and you analyze those fights, this is actually what it looks like. Surprisingly, they stay at range, they swing at each other right out of range because neither person wants to get cut. Neither person, like what you see in Dog Brothers, what you see in Wekaf, what you see in even the Sayok video I posted, actually wants to go through having half their head chopped off to get close enough to cause the kind of damage you see in those videos. It's a lot different when it's a live blade. And so this is the reality of live blade actual fighting when I've looked at it. Now, this is the style of sparring I did the most. And this style of sparring is hand sparring. Your entire goal is to just hit the hand. Now, this may look stupid, but you don't realize the amount of timing and quick reflexes that these guys have. And you don't realize that when you do this with an actual metal tool, which I've tried, or even a stick, and without gloves on, how quickly this can end a fight. Hand sparring, in my opinion, is the primary tool for long range fighting that people should be sparring, because the second you get past this range, it's a free for all, and it will end up in a takedown most likely if it's a stick. If it's a sword, you're probably both dead if it didn't end in hand sparring. Very hard to prevent death when both people are coming at each other with knives and get close enough to like stab each other's heads and bodies. So the hand sparring range, the long range, is the only range where you can stay safe. And if you're going to spend time anywhere becoming amazing at that range with good footwork and having people try and close in on you and just making sure you can hit them in the hand, that's a fight ender when you're holding a machete. That's a fight ender even when you're holding a telescopic baton. And once they drop their weapon and you still have yours, again, whether it's a baton, a machete, or a sword, you control the fight. It's up to you what happens next. And so we used to spend a huge percentage of our time outside of those drills, those live drills, with hand sparring. And it's arguably, in my opinion, one of the best training tools for weapon-based fighting. A lot of people are like, well, you can't survive a live blade attack. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm like, do hand sparring. It actually will increase your chances of survival tremendously if you have a weapon and you spend a huge part of your training doing hand sparring. I'm telling you, it's so underrated as a tool for self-defense. Let's just look at this video here, because this is showing, again, blade integrity. And again, another important point about Ilustrisimo is that the blade sticks to the person. Now, I want to just show that again. Now, if you look here, I want you to follow how the blade comes right in after the defense. It cuts the arm, and then it comes right in. It does not retract too far, again, to have to re-attack. In other words, if you block, the attack follows. If you block, the attack follows into the arm. Whatever the target that's closest, right into the body. If you look, he did not chamber over here the sword. Does not chamber it. He just cuts from wherever the sword is. He cuts from wherever the sword is. Now, this is oddly a tactic that works also with empty hand. It's a stickiness tactic. And it's a very, again, overlooked tactic that you want to get into grappling range, or if you want to attack somebody and I go to hit you, I don't need to retract to here. I can hit you and follow up and loop into an underhook. Now, this probably doesn't make sense on camera without me doing it with a partner. When I hit and your guard is up and you block like this, and I loop your guard down and I take your underhook, or I take your head and I clinch you up, that's allowing me to avoid retraction. It's allowing me to use stickiness to get close to you. I have a video on this showing the importance of stickiness. In other words, when my hand comes out to attack, I throw it out to attack, whether it's a jab, whatever that may be, it does not have to come back. It can be here right in your face, causing annoying damage, causing you to lose your field of vision of me. A great example of this is Vasyl Lomachenko in boxing. He puts his hand, he guards people's faces as he ghost steps to the right, as he cuts to the right, because he cuts off your field of vision. And then he frames against you so you can't turn back into him. And then when he finally releases the frame, he cracks you. In other words, he's using that stickiness and that long range the same way as you would use a sword to create angles, to cause damage, and to blind you. And that's exactly what Kali Ilustrisimo does too. Incredible style. This is just a foundational kind of video. If you're looking at like the basics, this is how you learn it from day one. So you're going to learn first these basic strikes and how to counter them. Now, again, Kali Ilustrisimo, it's a bladed system. So the angle your sword hits the other guy's sword is important, because in Kali Ilustrisimo, you will always block with the flat part of the blade. So this is something, again, that's missed in some other Filipino martial arts, where there's not always a thought process of, am I blocking with the right part of my sword? Is the flat part of my blade? Because you don't know the integrity of their blade versus yours. You want to keep your sword safe in the fight. And so it's just very interesting. This was just something I had never learned, the importance of the angle of block, even just as much as the angle of attack. And if you could see here, these same principles I was just talking about the sword always being as close as possible to your opponent, exist here too. So you're not necessarily blocking ever in Kali Ilustrisimo, you're attacking. It just so happens that the attack is a block. And again, this is demonstrated perfectly here. All right, beautiful, beautiful demonstrations of attacking at the same time as you defend and allowing the blade to continue its motion. Okay, and they also, again, understand power generation almost better than anyone. Anytime I would do a strike on Tommy that would not be a kill strike, he was like, Ilan, do it again. That's not a good strike. The angle's not good. It's not going to cause enough damage. Everything is boom, power, drive through. So incredible system. This was kind of a quick breakdown, quick introduction to it. I really, really love Kali Ilustrisimo, and I hope one day I get to train it again. Anyway, I hope you like this video. If you have a school near you, please go check it out. You'll really thank me. In the comment section below to increase my engagement and allow my channel to grow. Like and subscribe. Thanks so much.